Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
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 I don't know. The room's different. I've got a new...
You idiot.
I fucked up our
The
vibe.
feng shui. Although I do like that there's now an opportunity to permanently conceal
Oh, do you think that's how I'm going to
the
do that?
image.
Do
Yeah.
you think that's what I'm going to do?
I think it's going to happen.
You think I just didn't purposely place it there so I can always have it, it's centered inside of that cube?
No.
It's not going anywhere. If anything, I'll maybe bookend it, but I will never just let it go. Though, in the position where I need to fill that with comic books, I'll put it somewhere else.
I still think it's a bad idea to put comics on boxes of comics on glass shelves.
It's also tin.
Yeah, it's not a great metal.
No, it's aluminum. It's aluminum and glass. It's fine. If anything, the glass is probably the strongest part of this. It's fine. Look, you can move it.
Sorry, how is you wiggling it proving it's sturdy?
Well, then it's not
What do you think you're proving when you wiggle it?
that it feels solid when I wiggle it.
Yeah, see how it bends and moves?
It didn't bend. It just shriveled. It just, it's fine.
I don't know,
fine.
man. I think it's a bad idea.
No. They're fine. Everything's fine.
I think I'll be vindicated.
Look, I did what you told me.
Also, I see what's happened with the order of them, too, now.
What, left or right?
Except A is down there, and then Swamp Thing S is up.
Yeah, because it's going left to right and then left to right.
Bottom to top?
Well, yeah, because then I can keep going up.
Ugh, Jesus.
So I can keep going up.
Just put it the other way around and just move them that way.
That's a ridiculous... Now I can just grow up rather than putting it at the top and then it's top.
You're going to have to move them anyway, because you're going to put the new box doesn't always go at the end. It goes in somewhere. So you're already going to have to shuffle them anyway. But now you have them in not a... Ugh.
But the next thing...
The idea that I have to constantly explain to you how to order things is crazy.
If you want, I can go right to left. If that's the...
Why would you make it worse?
Each week we talk about the weird and wonderful world. The weird and wonderful world of DC Comics.
Yeah, I would love to see the wonder in a world this chaotic.
It makes sense to go from bottom to top. You're insane.
Absolutely does not. You're the craziest person I've ever met.
While fielding questions from listeners like you.
You're a war criminal.
I finally got... everything is on shelves again. I'm getting there. I can't do everything in one day.
Just pointed to a giant pile of loose comics.
I'm getting there. I know. That's this week. I will deal with it. I'm also going to get the dividers. Then I have all the pieces are here.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
they're all here.
Okay,
Everything is ready.
Sure. Yeah. It seems ready. It seems good.
We've got a review.
Woo!
We technically got several reviews.
We sure did.
We sure
did.
11 reviews.
Yeah, something like that.
Numbers 188 to 199.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
We're not going to read it today.
Yeah.
But number 200 came in.
We got the 200th review?
We did it.
Holy shit.
We did it.
It better be good.
We did it, you son of a bitch.
Because if it's not good...
Easy. Hey.
We're not going to get our music podcast that we agreed to
music podcast? No, this is about Lord of the Rings.
We talked about it.
Lord of the Rings.
It came up.
I will burn this entire disorganized mess to the ground.
Because that'll make it better, right?
It would be.
You'd rather
I'd be putting it out of its misery.
Because it's in so much pain because it's bottom to top.
Kill me.
The reviews, they're 5-star reviews, luckily.
That's right.
A variety of comic shops Google reviews.
That's right.
From Anthony Latorella.
That's right.
Are you queuing something up?
No.
I have zero trust for you anymore with a computer.
Oh, yeah, and I just have to sit here and trust a guy who organizes comics like this.
This is
fucking
the smart
hypocrisy.
It's from there. It's down.
Yeah.
That makes sense there.
Yeah. I had to yell at you for weeks about that to get it like that.
The trades
And you had these in order, then you made it worse somehow.
Because I moved them from there, and they were, I guess they were top and bottom there. But that's because I had nowhere else to go. Now I'm going up. It's all up from here. You're probably here to find some great reads because of the 5 out of 5 stars podcast called the Dr. DC Podcast.
That's right.
An insightful podcast full of DC lore and comedic relief. Aren't we funny today?
Yeah, what's funnier than having a genuine argument?
Not the first, not the last. If not, then what are you waiting for? Open up those podcast apps and enjoy, and get to enjoy every moment. Look at that.
Also, you say you're working
Jesus
up,
Christ.
but then there's a gap here, a random box, and then 3 random boxes up top. Working up to fucking what?
Okay, hold on. That is comics I need to sort.
And then there's also the loose pile.
That was a different.
Actually, 4 loose piles.
Those are a different group. I've been
of
falling
comics
behind.
that also need to be sorted. That is months worth of pull list
Yes, it
comics.
is.
New comics that you're just not reading.
Yeah.
You're just sticking in a pile.
The comics I'm for reading. We talked about
I
that.
need to liberate them.
This was a box that I had bought in before, and I'm dealing with them. That's why the plastic's on there, because I bought.
I like that you're
box.
saying I'm dealing with, like it hasn't sat there for months.
I'm actively dealing. They're in a new place. I'm dealing with it.
Sure.
And so that is a different group of comics that I need to sort. Then there.
There's another loose pile of comics there. Yeah.
I know. Then these 3 are not DC or Marvel. They're like the other companies, which
Yeah.
is why they're separate.
Sure.
That's why they're there.
Right. Presumably not in any order.
No, they're left to right alphabetical.
They're left to right. These boxes, they're definitely left to right. What's inside them, couldn't say.
It's
But the boxes
alphabetically.
are absolutely left to right. I think if you look at them, you'll see that these boxes go left to right.
If you move that box over there, you would be like, that's wrong spot for it.
These are absolutely left to
Yeah,
right
yeah.
boxes.
No, I meant the fucking comics inside of them are going left to right alphabetical the way that they should be. All right. That's another loose pile that I need to sort. The piles, I know they're organized in a very specific way.
I don't think they
in the
are.
loose piles.
I bet if I pulled a pile out and just looked at it, they're not organized in any way.
Well-
It's a loose assemblage, out of order, of each week of comics you've thrown on top
yes,
of a pile.
the organization is that when I bought them. That's a different purchase. That's a different purchase, and those are different purchases. I know,
but those aren't 4 different purchases. That's like 10 purchases in 4 piles. So
Yeah, but I know it's based on what I've scanned.
your
and what I
throne of
haven't.
lies is coming apart.
It's based on what I've scanned so far. I haven't scanned any of these.
You haven't even scanned them?
No.
Good lord.
That's why a lot of them are still not in their things, because I haven't. Oh, there's trades at the bottom. I forgot about that. I need to put those out. I'm working on it, okay?
Welcome to Rage Timber. I mean, just the unmitigated gall.
I'm working on it. There's a process.
Sure.
You're amidst it.
Well, yeah.
Call it the 1930s of podcast organization. There's a lot going on. It
Yeah,
seems
and
chaotic.
as we know, famously, the 30s were great.
Yeah, nothing big and bad happened.
No, it wasn't a decade of misery followed by like the biggest global conflict of
I think
of
you're
all
being
time.
a bit of a fascist right now, entering the 1930s of this comic space.
Good lord. Jesus.
Trying to burn the room. I mean, you're putting the pieces together.
Wow. Good lord. You make a torching the Bundestag fucking joke?
Did you see that Harry Styles hat that needed to be changed because there was a Nazi symbol on it?
Jesus, what? He
Well-
wore a hat that had a Nazi symbol
Well,
on
the
it?
problem was that it was he has his album's called Harry's House, and on the back of it says HH.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's Heil Hitler.
yeah,
you can't do that.
He didn't know, and so they had to re-put these hats out.
Good lord.
Yeah. So this week we're talking about the 1930s in comics.
Woo, baby.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about like basically not the earliest decade of comics, but the earliest decade of what is now DC.
DC comics, yeah.
Which is sort of interesting. I would argue it's even a thing mostly apart from most of the Golden Age, most of the 40s and that, because really we only get superheroes at the end of the 30s.
Wow. So this is largely just like supernatural gumshoe kind of stuff.
Some magic stuff, some detective
war
stuff, some Western stuff, some war stuff,
romance.
Yeah. It's all that kind of things. And mostly in very small, like, to be continued installments of things.
Sure. But everything's largely like anthology too, right?
Totally. So I made you read a specific, literally one page of a comic that is incredibly difficult to find. I actually had to go to a pirate site for it.
You were looking for this one specifically.
Yes.
Why?
So I made you read the first page of a Dr. Occult story from New Fun Comics number 6. And I made you do that. It's from 1935. I made you do that because it's the first appearance of Dr. Occult.
Oh, of course.
And Dr. Occult is generally considered to be essentially DC's first superhero who still kind of gets used in publication occasionally.
Yeah. Wow.
So this book is not digitized, not available anywhere.
No.
Not legally, I mean.
Yes.
It's not on DC Universe Infinite. It's not on Comixology. Good luck finding it. It's also from 1935. Like, if anybody has a copy of this, that's outrageous.
Send it to us.
We deserve it. But send it to me because I'll know where to put it.
Well, I know where to put it.
Yeah, what I mean by that is it won't just like sit in a sad pile for months.
Then it will get organized if there's a system. You just don't get it.
If you imagine that each one of your comics is like a toy in Toy Story, that is those are all the toys having like a fucking existential crisis. Like, Andy doesn't play with us anymore. They're fucking freaking out constantly. Think of what you're doing to them.
They love it. They're like, oh, we're gonna get it put in a box soon. Now we get to be free.
Have you not seen Toy Story? They're not ever happy about being put in a box.
Well, then they should be happy that they're sitting on an empty shelf then. You fucking idiot. You just talked yourself into the system.
Shit. Damn it. He's right. There's no better way to do it.
Just loose piles.
Fuck, he's right. No more boxes for me.
That's right.
Damn it.
Fucking idiot.
So New Fun Comics number 6 from 1935 is the first appearance of Dr. Occult. It's like a 44-page comic. And the Dr. Occult story is literally, this is part 1 of 4, and it's 1 page.
Wait, so the next page isn't more of that same story?
No. The next page is just like a crossword puzzle or a different comic.
So the next time you're going to get
you have to get New Fun Comics number 7 to get page 2 of a 4-page Dr. Occult story.
Crooks.
I mean, but here's the thing, but there's like 15 stories.
Yeah.
Some of them are like 2 pages, some of them are 3. Also, there's like
most of them are racist.
There's a bunch of shit in there that's like learn how to draw faces, and you're like, wow, those are some big white lips.
Yep.
It's there's like crosswords and ads and like letters columns and that, but it is so much more of like a funnies kind of magazine.
I mean, it looks like it probably was newspaper print.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no color.
No.
What did you think of the single page portion of a Dr. Occult story that
it's
read?
very funny because so it's a vampire story.
It is, yes.
Basically, what I love is that my favorite first read of it was that Dr. Occult is walking through an alley and then hears like someone go help, and then it looks like he helps the vampire.
Yeah,
they don't show him helping the guy. They just see him like with a vampire.
Yeah, he just right away goes a vampire.
Yes, and then the next page is him with the guy.
Yeah,
so he doesn't show he doesn't kill the vampire.
I mean, truly, the fact that it's like 8 panels. So much happens between the panels.
Yes. Yeah, it's just like he's like a vampire, and then he's with the victim.
Like I could almost just read it. Okay, Dr. Occult, the ghost detective, has sworn to combat supernatural evil in this world. That's it. Keep in mind, this is his first appearance. We're not being reminded of this.
No.
That's the first time anyone's heard it. Passing an alley one evening, he hears a cry for help and acts. A vampire. That's panel 1.
Yeah.
Panel 2. Thank you. What was it? Never mind. Just go home and rest. Here's my card in the event you should ever need me. Panel.
So it doesn't say what he does. Doesn't say what happened to
Well,
him.
you see him holding up what we would now know with the benefit of history is the mystic symbol of 7.
But I like that he gives him his card because he's just like, don't worry about what just happened, but here's my card. And the guy reads the card and is like, oh, this is supernatural shit. That's what just happened, right?
Panel 3.
Yeah.
When the victim of the attack reaches home, and then Xander, you're pale. What's happened? Nothing, dear. Panel 4. But that night, it's just a vampire creeping outside a window. Panel 5. Receiving an urgent phone call next morning.
Yeah.
A cult speeds to Xander Amster's residence. It's as I feared. The 2 pinpricks on her throat are the marks of a vampire.
So who called?
Xander.
But
because the wife has been.
Oh, it's the wife that got bit.
Wife got bit. Panel 6. After first placing Mrs. Amster under strict guard in a private sanitarium, cool.
Throw her in her crazy house.
Dr. Occult believes her and throws her in a sanitarium. Substitutes his lovely assistant, Rose Psychic, in her bed. That evening, his trap set, he waits tensely in a closet while monotonous hours drag slowly by.
So wait, the vampire's going to come back?
Just wait. Panel 7. The vampire is coming in through the window, and Rose Psychic yells, "Occult, help!" And then panel 8. He's holding up his symbol again, and it says, Dr. Occult's magic symbol has no effect on the vampire. Rose and he are at its mercy. To be continued.
Yeah.
That's the story.
So wait.
That's the first appearance of DC's first superhero.
Why does he come back to the same place?
So many questions. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not convinced they all get answered.
No. I'm going to guess in 4 pages they probably don't.
But the thing I love about that is these things are such anthologies that I think you get a sense even from this that like they don't really know how to set up a lot of ongoing things.
No.
1935 is pretty early for this. Like even like Detective Comics #1 is in 1937. So we're still 2 years before that.
Sure.
And I think like the things we take for granted, like when you read Action Comics #1, which is from 1938, there's a very definitive like, here's Superman's origin. His planet exploded. He crash landed. He's got incredible strength. He's very fast, blah, blah, blah. And then you're dropped into the adventure. Yeah. They like give you some context. This is just like, I don't know, there's a vampire or whatever. And then later they like manage to finish the story. And then later people have to go like, I guess we got to like make him a thing.
Yeah.
You could tell there's a bit of a learning curve between like just making adventure stuff with like a cliffhanger. So someone buys the next issue versus like actually having an idea.
Yes.
And portraying that out to people, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah, New Fun Comics #6 is like full of these like 1 or 2 page stories, and then like activities, letters, columns, ads, find your way through the maze, like all of those kind of like things,
like newspaper like things.
Totally, and they range from like Western stuff to romance stuff to creepy vampire to all sorts of things.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a bunch of questions.
All right.
So why don't we jump into them?
Let's do it.
First, we're going over to Facebook.
Going to the face and the book. Going to the Facebook.
First question comes from Braden Ketty, who asks, what character or moment from DC Comics' early history has aged the worst since its beginning?
Oh. Character or moment?
That has aged the worst.
I think the one that people would be inclined to say is technically not from the 30s. Oh. I think a lot of people would. There's a panel in Batman #1, which is also the first appearance of Catwoman.
Yeah.
And in that story, where she's trying to steal this gem on a boat, she's got all this makeup on as her disguise, and he like wipes the makeup off of that. There's some panel where Batman says, "Quiet or Papa Spank." And you see it online a lot.
I think that's aged even better.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we've kind of come around to it. I think you see that one out there a lot, but that's 1940. That's actually that's not the 30s. Something that I don't know that I can think of a specific one, but like even just in this comic we read, there's just a page that's like learn how to draw faces, and there's a full on like blackface caricature that, you know, like the thick white lips, the like
the like mammy kind of thing.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just there. It's just like, well, that's obviously how you draw a black person. Just
I was skipping through some of the other pages that in this sort of collection that you pulled up, and there's a lot of like depiction of like different countries, and like it's all not great. Like it's all very like wide swaths and
yeah. I mean, God, the cover of it's like Detective Comics #1 or something like that is like a very stereotypical like East Asian caricature with like a Fu Manchu and the eyes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're still pre-war at that point, but like there's not a lot of like cultural respect.
No, God, no.
You know, I think the things that you'll probably see though more than anything is, you know, there are absolutely, if you go looking, you'll find racism, especially against the Japanese and the Chinese, I think.
Totally.
Because I would actually argue that when you do see black people, it's probably racist, but you'll see them less than you would see the also racist Japanese and Chinese caricatures in these early days. But what you will see a ton of, because it's in everything, is the sexism.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Some of it is the inferred sexism, helpless women and things like that. Some of it is even in Action #1 in the Superman story, a story in which Lois Lane is just as ballsy as you see her now.
Oh, wow, really?
And she like slaps this guy that's trying to hit on her, and Clark is pretending to be meek, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know, Lois," and she's like, "You're an unbearable, spineless coward," and she literally calls him that
in the one that you and I read.
Yeah,
too,
she calls him that and leaves. You know, like Lois is great, but there's a panel in there where like Superman overhears that the police are responding to like a domestic assault.
Yeah.
And he shows up, and the first thing he says is, You're not beating a woman now." And he like hits the guy. And it's like, he's saying it because he's there to save the day, but it's also like, I don't know that was the point. Like, just don't, you know what I mean? Like, like the only reason he had the upper hand is because she was a woman.
Yes.
Like that's the sort of like implied, inferred cultural sexism that even in a book where panels later we see the first appearance of like one of the most empowering, you know, self-sufficient female characters in comics.
Yeah.
You still have that thing in there. I think that's the thing you'll see a lot.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, with that, let's move on from Facebook, and we're going over to Twitter.
Twitter.
First question comes from Truth, Justice, and Hope, who asks, do you think the first couple of years of Superman comics would have benefited from introducing supervillains sooner?
Oh, interesting. So, Superman debuts in Action Comics #1 in 1938. His first supervillain, who technically doesn't do anything super in his first appearance, is the Ultra Humanite.
Oh, okay.
And that's Action Comics 13.
Wow.
So a year has passed, basically. And in Action Comics 13, he doesn't do anything super. Eventually, the Ultra Humanite, you see that he can transfer his mind into different bodies. And then eventually, we know the Ultra Humanite now is having his mind in that big albino gorilla with the red harness and shit like that.
DC loves a gorilla.
Totally. But in his first appearance, he's just like a bald mad scientist who looks a lot like Luthor.
Interesting.
In a wheelchair, who has like
Professor X,
who has like an electricity trap that Superman falls into, and that's it. He's not actually super in any way.
Interesting.
So yeah, but what that means is that for the previous year, Superman had been exposing like corruption.
Really?
He's like stopping like thieves.
You failed this city.
Stopping thieves. Like literally, he responds to domestic assaults.
Wow.
He's making sure the governor doesn't get bought off. Like he's doing that kind of shit for a year. Before there's even like a whiff.
Well, there is the first one where he's like the car and stuff,
but that's still
yeah.
like he's using his powers. He's not using his powers, but he's not like
There's not
aliens. There's not death rays. There's not like stuff like it's always like, hey, I've got a great plan to get into the bank. See,
sure.
And then Superman goes, nope, and they go, damn, and that's it. Like,
fair.
But I think interestingly, I actually don't think he'd be better off
with a villain that early
if he had super villains.
Sure.
That early. I think there's a couple of things at play. One, this genre very new.
Sure. Yeah.
So they gotta lay the groundwork.
Yeah.
And especially because the genre is new, I think if you had him right away just go up against something super, and maybe this is part of the reason why Dr. Occult is a little more obscure.
Sure.
Right away, he's fighting a vampire, but at least we know what a vampire is. But we barely, in Action Comics #1, find out that Superman's an alien. It's like 2 panels at the beginning, and then they go, and he's got great strength in the way, like ants are strong.
Oh,
kind of like shit like that. They just sort of write it off. I think if in that issue, then it was also like Brainiac, like, whatever 30s version we would get. I think that feels like too separate. I think part of the appeal of Superman is like, no, there are like real problems. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy who can't be intimidated because he can't be shot. Yeah. This is a guy who can, save the day in multiple places at once because he's faster than a train. Like, I think so we have to have him tackle our problems first. Like, what's the big criticism that we have in a lot of comic media, even movies and that, is like, where are they saving people?
Sure.
So much of it now is like the villain's coming for them, or it's like a thing, or they're fighting these crisis things. But like, how much of that is like actually like stopping an asteroid that's going to crush a neighborhood, or like actually saving people? And I think there's a benefit in having that be the initial legacy of Superman and Batman initially, is to have that is we have to set up the idea that they're saving us.
Yeah.
And then maybe that invites greater challenge, and then those things evolve. But I think if you kicked it off the bat, I don't know if maybe it wouldn't like hit as hard. It's funny too, because when you get to the 50s and you get to the Adventures of Superman like serial.
Sure, yeah.
That's the George Reeve one.
Yeah. The
first like 2 seasons of that is the same way.
Oh yeah.
It's totally, just crooks. Yeah. And Superman would like bend steel bars open and go, not today, and they go, damn.
Yeah.
It's only like in the 3rd season, I think, when they went to like it was filmed in color, that you even get a hint of like the mole men, or like, like something a little more sci-fi or anything like that. But like you never even get like Luthor or something in that show. And so I think that might be an indicator of that there's a certain trajectory that audiences back then needed. Is that he's helping us start there.
Yeah.
I
like that. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It's also like, what's the #1 criticism of Man of Steel?
Yeah.
Is that he basically, with the exception of like Lois, he doesn't save anyone individually.
No.
He saves the world in a very abstract kind of way. But the thing that everyone complains about is like, while he's in the Indian Ocean fighting a like nameless machine, half of Metropolis gets wiped out. We're like, he could be there and flying and saving people, or holding a building up, or that's not to say he would save everybody, but we don't see the effort. We don't see the effort of it.
It's usually the
and I think that's the thing that bothers people, is like, I think we can imply that it's tragic and we can imply that it's bad, but to not see the effort, I think, is the thing that really makes people go like, well, but that's not Superman. He would never do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
100%.
So I think that's part of it. So I actually think it's better for those early days of Superman to have him like literally in the first one, he's trying to wake up the governor because he's like, someone's about to be executed, but I have evidence that they're not the person. And the governor's like, all right. And one of like the feats he accomplishes is that the governor sleeps in a room with a steel door, and the guy's like, "You're not going to disturb him." And he goes, "Crunch," and goes in and wakes up the governor and says, "Can you look at this?"
That's very funny.
That's the adventure. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of funny.
That's good. All right, next question comes from the Multiverse of Marvel podcast, who asks, is there something from Detective Comics you would like to have carried on other than Batman?
Ooh. Interesting.
I don't think I know that much about the sort of Batman days, because I know that, I mean, based on the name, it's probably like detective stories.
I mean, the big one is our boy Slam Bradley.
Oh, that's right.
Slam him up.
We'll get there.
That's the big one. I mean, he ran for like 150 issues in Detective Comics.
Yeah, and he's doing great. He has his own product line.
He's diversified.
But otherwise,
interesting though.
Yeah, beyond those two
character debuts. Crimson Avenger, that would be one. Crimson Avenger first appears in Detective Comics 20 and is sort of a Green Hornet riff.
Sure.
That would be one that would have been neat. Or would be neat to kind of revive a bit. Very pulpy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. Batman really takes over there. Boy Commando's debut in that book. Yeah, it's interesting. At a certain point, all of the character debuts are really like
Batman characters.
Yeah, I'm going to say Crimson Avenger, who's kind of the most forgotten of the Seven Soldiers of Victory, which are Green Arrow and Speedy, Star Spangled Kid and Stripesy, Vigilante, Shining Knight, and Crimson Avenger. So yeah,
it's true.
Slam Bradley got 150 issues. I don't think Crimson Avenger did. And Crimson Avenger, there's a new version of that character in that, and like they kind of weave in and out, but only when people remember that they exist. Yeah. So I guess maybe that one, because I do like the idea of the Green Hornet. I don't think I might be getting this wrong. I think it being a Green Hornet riff, part of it was that Crimson Avenger would like infiltrate crime from the inside.
Okay.
Like pose as a criminal.
Oh,
to take it down.
Like a Green Hornet.
Yeah, the thing I've been saying the whole time.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've literally said riffing on Green Hornet.
Yeah.
And then you said,
yeah. Saying the
Jesus.
same thing. I'm on the same page as you.
Do you know what? I think your thoughts would be better organized if you didn't apply the same system that you do to comics.
I can't think and talk at the same time.
You can't do either.
I did. There's a system. I'm letting the toys free.
I'm saying Crimson Avenger.
Sure. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
All right. Let's leave Twitter and head on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram. Take some questions and answer them.
Multi Sanchez asks, were there any characters that were household names like Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman from this era? How did these early comics influence modern comics?
Oh, boy. Well, Wonder Woman is not from the 30s.
No.
Wonder Woman's first appearance, I think, is 1941.
Yeah.
All-Star Comics number 8.
Yeah. No, I think it's just like those characters, right? Yeah.
Batman and Superman both debut in the 30s, but again, like I said, at the end of the 30s.
Yeah.
Slam Bradley is a big character. He is from Detective Comics number 1 in 1937, and he runs for 150 issues or whatever it is. Batman's debut is Detective Comics 27, which means there are 26 issues where the number one character people are buying Detective Comics for is Slam Bradley.
That's hilarious.
There are other adventures in there, but, I think a popular one in Action Comics, I mean, Zatara the Magician is relatively popular.
Yeah.
And was sort of distinguished by having the backwards magic thing. Because, magic stories were part of it. There's also Tex Thompson, who eventually is the Americommando, but
sure, yeah.
That's I think he's and Mr. America, but that's also in Action Comics.
What about Sergeant Rock?
I think we're before that.
Really?
Because the war breaks out in 39.
Sure.
I don't think we get Sergeant Rock until the
Oh wow.
the 40s.
Okay.
Let's see if there's someone I'm forgetting here. Dr. Occult and Rose Psychic, I think, are slightly big names. I think your bigger names are probably... If we're talking outside Batman and Superman, the biggest names are probably outside of DC. You're probably thinking like Flash Gordon or Dick Tracy or shit like that. Those things are huge. But I mean, the influence of Dick Tracy is undeniable. On Slam Bradley and even just the existence of Detective Comics.
Yeah.
But also, like, consider that in like New Fun Comics and like All American Comics and all of these other publications, there was always like a gumshoe thing or a detective or a masked avenger or like a thing like that. And I think the influence of Dick Tracy, where I see it most clearly and earliest, is in the evolution of Batman's Rogues Gallery. Because Dick Tracy has a Rogues Gallery.
Oh, okay.
With unique looks, like there's Flat Top, Hammerhead, and they've got they got names and unique looks, and you know, like there's such a style and shit to Dick Tracy. And then when you get to, you know, even Superman, like we said, he's mostly just like busting crooks and shit. There's not a lot of like big villains. But Batman debuts in 1939, and a year later we have the first appearance of the Joker, first appearance of Catwoman, and we start just like then he gets Robin. We start laying out this kind of very colorful cast of characters, and then I think that then has the knock-on influence elsewhere. But I think that comes straight from Dick Tracy.
Okay, sure, yeah, that makes sense.
You know, and then what Batman does that's interesting is kind of take that Dick Tracy model and then kind of bridge the gap between gumshoe stuff and what Superman is doing. And be this kind of like super adventurer, kind of like Zorro, but Zorro had a car, you know, like all of these things that now we think of as like even internal to Batman's story. I think that they're external to Batman's story. And I think that's where that comes in. And then you have just this idea explodes of you have a hero, they have a distinct look, they have colorful villains, they have names and looks, you know what I mean? They're not just like, my name's like Gerald Hudgens, I'm the mayor, and I'll get you. It becomes like, no, he's the Joker, or like this person is, you know, and then it goes over to Superman. He has to have the ultra humanite.
Yeah.
Like we start crafting these bigger personas. I mean, the influence is that those things take hold. And by the time you're in the 40s, you know, war comics are still big. There's still Westerns. We haven't done away with genre comics, but superheroes are huge, you know?
Yeah.
DC is, in the 40s, they're publishing Superman and Batman and Action Comics and Detective Comics.
And Superman, right?
I said that.
Well, I just meant like Superman as like...
I said it.
Okay.
I said Superman and Batman and Action Comics and Detective
I thought you just meant like as characters.
Hey, listeners, just keep a running tally of how many times this happens.
I thought you meant as a character, not
good
a specific
Lord.
series.
Wonder Woman, but then you also, you know, there's Captain Marvel, there's like the Captain Marvel family. We get like the sort of expansion of the line across publishers and across all of these things that eventually all kind of fall under DC. They become huge. They're household names. They're massive.
But in the 30s,
and it changes the landscape of comics to the point where now today it feels like such a novelty to read a thing that isn't superhero comics. We're actually seeing, I would argue, probably the richest non-superhero comic era now that we have since like the 70s. Between,
you're talking about like indie books, or
yeah, you know, like I know Vertigo for a long time but Vertigo also always had kind of a foot back in the door.
Sure,
you could always put like Shade the Changing Man is part of DC, you know,
Sure.
Swamp Thing is part of like you could always kind of reach back that way. But like the landscape, you know, with Image started as kind of just like, it's independent, but we're also doing superhero stuff.
Yes.
But now between that and Boom and IDW and all these like other publishers,
Well,
we
and
probably
the
have
horror
the
stuff that DC is doing now.
DC
too,
does it, but there's also all this indie stuff. Like I think we probably have the most and
Sure.
best variety of non-superhero stuff that we have since the 70s. And that's the biggest influence of those characters like Batman and Superman, is that they kind of overtook the entire medium.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're finally now, surprisingly, considering how much Batman is out there, we're actually getting a bit of a breather.
Well, yeah, I mean, and weirdly, right now at DC, it's gone to like parody levels a little bit, where it's like over half the line is Bat books.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or Bat adjacent.
Yeah.
I don't really subscribe to the theory that Nightwing is a Batman, like a Bat title. I know why people say it, but like, he's a different character.
Yeah.
But I get it. But even without that, though, like there's like 30 some odd Bat titles out of like 50 some odd published each month by DC. So it's a little poetic at this point, but
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from a different platform. We are leaving Instagram and going over to Reddit,
where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
That's correct. First question comes from Draco Folly, who asks, how many companies ended up merging to finally create what we now know as DC?
So, I had to pull this up.
Oh.
Because this was not necessarily stuff I kind of half knew it.
Yeah.
If you look at the really early stuff, there's National Allied Publications.
Is EC too part of this?
EC is also under DC, but EC comes later, I think.
Okay.
There's some weird stuff.
Okay.
So, National Allied Publications forms in 1934, and they're a comic publishing company. They start with New Fun, the big comic magazine, which then becomes New Fun Comics, which later becomes More Fun Comics, but it's the same title.
Sure.
And then as they're printing stuff like that, then they also put out a book called Detective Comics in 1937. And that starts coming out. But then there's something where it's like they get like heavy into debt with the distributor, and the business is kind of going fine, but they're in too much debt, basically. The distributor, Harry Donenfeld, published pulp magazines and stuff like that. Okay. And then eventually they had to take him on as a partner to get out of debt.
Oh, okay.
And so then they became Detective Comics Inc., which would eventually just be shortened to DC.
Oh, okay.
So National Allied and Donenfeld distributors become what is DC.
Okay.
But then they also buy All American Publications, which was publishing All American Comics, which is the book that eventually Green Lantern makes his first appearance in.
Okay.
Is in All American Comics. So then they buy that, and then that ends up under the brand. And then, we know as we go on, even more, eventually Fawcett Comics falls to them, Quality Comics falls to them, Charlton Comics falls to them. A bunch kind of get rolled in as we go. But in the early days, it's basically there are two publication companies and a distributor, basically, are the foundation of what we now know as DC. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's pretty crazy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think Marvel has the same.
Marvel has its own weird, because they used to be Timely Comics, and then that company like almost went out of business, or mostly went out of business, and then they became Marvel Comics. It has its own kind of like there's a merger or a buy or something. That happens.
Like comics has always been like, whoa. Like,
I mean, certainly back then. I mean, essentially these were like rags for kids.
Yeah.
Probably not that lucrative.
Yeah.
Certainly not before these big merchandisable characters.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody had a Slam Bradley lunchbox.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But what you can get.
It is for a box.
Slam them up. Hey, Slam Bradley here. Slam them up your box.
You're up your lunchbox. For anyone's listening for the first time.
I'm sorry.
I'm not. This
Just
is,
trust it's an inside joke.
but also
that's
this
good.
This is basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're not missing that much. You don't really need the context.
All right. Next question comes from Teach Me I Learn.
Okay.
Who asks, how popular was DC in the 1930s?
I mean, popular enough, I guess. Certainly at the end of the 30s. But I got to imagine that you don't go into debt while being successful.
Yeah.
I think the general, the acquisitions and mergers probably put them in a better position.
Sure.
Even without the advent of these kind of giant anchor characters.
This is also a new media format, right?
Yeah, I mean, funnies and comics and pulp magazines and that have been around for a while anyway. But, even those characters I was talking about, like Flash Gordon and Dick Tracy, I think they also start in the 30s.
Yeah.
It is kind of in its infancy.
Yeah.
So you're also building interest in a thing.
Mm-hmm.
What helps is having recurring characters come back. I think that where you start to get that, you had some. I think it's hard to call some recurring when, Dr. Occult's story took 4 months.
Yeah.
But it's 4 pages. Yes. You know what I mean? I think it's hard to call that recurring, even if he showed up in a new story after that. Though you really see it, I think, when Detective Comics starts.
Yeah.
And Slam Bradley is this feature.
Yeah.
That keeps happening. And then some of the backup stories, things would come in and out. And then by Detective Comics 20, you get Crimson Avenger. Now we have a masked hero. And then Detective Comics 27, Batman. And then it's we're off to the races.
Yeah.
And then into the 50s, you add Martian Manhunter into that title and stuff I would. I got to imagine it was a pretty low profit game.
Yeah.
Even if it was worth it as a business, it was probably they're making them cheap. The reason you have 15 stories by different artist teams is that they can each do 1 page in X amount of time. You put it together on cheap newsprint, no colors, and it goes out. And it's throw a fucking crossword in there or whatever, for the kids. And you probably make it cheap. As we all know, old comics are printed on shitty ass paper.
Yeah.
They're rags, which is why it's so hard to find them, because the idea that anyone would care about them, not just take them to the park and wave them around and you know what I mean? The idea that anyone kept them at all was so foreign. But it was probably, it was clearly worth it to keep going, but I can't imagine it was good work or lucrative. But I think as soon as you hit the gold vein of Superman and Batman, then you're oh my god, they'll eat this shit up. And then you see it across the industry. Everyone's well, we have a Superman, or we've got a superhero, my guy's the Blue Beetle. Dan Garrett is from the 30s. Dollman from Quality Comics is from the 30s. By the end in 1939, you start seeing everyone's trying to dip in now because Superman's been around for a bit. We've seen how good that is. Yeah.
But nobody's carefully putting them in piles on shelves.
Yeah, including you.
That's a careful pile.
Is it? Look at it.
It's careful.
Looks like a fucking tilty tower. Listen, I know something about tilty towers.
Watch Scaredy Guys on YouTube.
I guess.
Yeah. A thing we did.
Briefly.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was. I'm doing it again.
Excuse me?
I'm not recording it. I'm just doing it. I'm doing it with other
I thought this was related to that conversation we were having before we started.
I mean,
Huh. See how it is.
That is a thing.
Hashtag last year of the podcast.
Hey, yeah! That is a thing that my wife and I do whenever we talk about you being indignant. We go, huh.
What do you mean whenever you talk about? How often does it come up?
Next question comes from First Mage, who asks, how would Superman have evolved if he stayed with his original power of super leaping instead of flight? Could he have been as popular as a character?
Oh, right. Yeah, the flight power I think comes from the Fleischer cartoons.
Really?
And then they brought it into the comics.
Oh.
I think it starts with those Fleischer cartoons. Because before then he would just leap. There's an early Action Comics. It might be Action Comics number 1 or 2 or something like that. Where he or 13, it might be the one with Ultra Humanite. He catches a guy and he's trying to get information out of him. He's trying to scare him. So he leaps. And while he's doing that, the guy distracts him and he goes, whoops. And he catches himself on a building, but he just drops the guy. The guy dies.
Whoa.
He's just and Superman says something like, if he didn't distract me, he wouldn't have fallen and died, but he got what he deserved. So
whoa.
It's very different.
But isn't the Fleischer cartoons where they say leap tall buildings in a single bound?
Yes.
So that's weird that's where
and in the very first one of those, you don't see him fly. And then in a later one, they need him to or something for the story.
Sure.
And it happens, and then I think that really takes off.
Sure. Literally.
Then it ends up in the comics. But in the same way that Kryptonite debuts, I think, on the radio show. I think they call it K-Rock.
Yeah. 102.
Yeah. Radiating the hits from your broken home world.
Well, there it is. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I do think there's an interesting kind of tradition with Superman of incorporating things from other media, because Superman is also one of the first ones that there was his magazine or Action Comics,
sure, yeah,
and then eventually Superman comics, but he was also in strips, in newspapers. They'd get a 3-panel thing, and it would be Superman, but also I think in those ones they had Jor-El and Lara.
Oh,
it was that was
the super team, yeah,
a different kind of thing. Yeah. But he had strips and shit. And so I think Superman is also one of the first ones that was well, something different is happening over there, but we actually think it's working. Let's bring it into this.
Yeah.
And flight is one of them. So Superman's original powers, as described in Action Comics number 1, is that he is faster than a locomotive. He is able to
not faster than a speeding bullet.
No. When you get to the Fleischer thing, it's able to change the course of mighty rivers, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, faster than a speeding bullet.
Yeah.
But in the original one, it's that he was faster than a locomotive. He was so powerful and he was invulnerable.
Which sounds
it was something nothing less than an exploding shell could break his skin, kind of thing.
Faster than a locomotive, not that fast.
Listen, that's faster.
That's like a horse,
yeah, horseman.
Yeah,
that's what Lois calls him. Whose horse is that?
Tic-tac.
I do think there's something interesting about the lower powered Superman from that era.
Sure, yeah.
Let's imagine that he didn't evolve. Certainly not to where he got in the Silver Age, where he's dragging a chain of planets.
Oh my God, Superman's evolving.
Yeah, it's super effective. Oh man, God, I'm
horseman.
Let's imagine his power stayed the same.
He tries to use it's ineffective.
I think what you would find is right away, he wouldn't be as inclined to space adventures.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Because I think that's a big part of it. Is that leap. Flying through space, Jesus, going to other planets, being super strong, all of these things. I think that's a big part of it. You probably get less space adventures with Superman. I think he basically at that point he's like a super soldier. He's got more power behind him than Captain America did, but he's still essentially just a guy.
Yeah.
In Action Comics 13, he gets electrocuted and passes out.
Whoa. Okay.
He's not unstoppable.
Yeah.
Which is maybe interesting, but I think maybe at that point he doesn't become he wouldn't be the beacon in the world.
Sure.
Because also that Superman, I think it's tied to the powers. It's tied to the powers and it's tied to the era. That Superman, like I said, is a lot more callous, and he'll just throw someone and be like, "Yeah, you got what you deserved."
Yeah.
Or he's not killing people, but he's also not going out of his way to stop the bad guys from dying. you know? And I think you can get away with that, A, in that era, because that's a very kind of black and white view of morality, and B, at his power level. As Superman gets more and more powerful, he, by needs, must be more and more careful.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about tyranny.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I think there is a correlation between, as he gains new powers, X-ray vision and that, well, we can't have him just like looking at the ladies' room.
Sure.
So now he has to become more and more morally pure and more incorruptible. Whereas before he was just like a guy with like a good sense of right and wrong who could do great things. And I think the reason we get the Superman we have now, who is incorruptible and, you know, such an aspirational figure, is because as they were adding powers, you have to make him good enough that he's not very clearly the villain.
Yeah. Well, that he's not going to take advantage of these things, right? Yeah.
You know what I mean? And part of that's, I think, evolving sensibilities, but I also think it's about the powers. So I think a Superman that doesn't have his powers evolve is less aspirational.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he's still impressive and interesting and cool, but like, I don't think he becomes the thing we know now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Let's leave Reddit and head on over to the doc scored. Thing we're prepared to do. Doc scored.
Shut the fuck up, man.
Just crumbling like a pile of comics.
Shut up. I can do this.
Doc scored. Song.
Wait for it.
Uh-huh. By waiting for it, we're going to do it now.
Wait for it.
Uh-huh. Any song. Literally
wait for it. I will think of a song. I have a song in my head.
Just any
I'm
song.
definitely going to do it right now.
You listen to music on the way here, probably.
I didn't.
Oh.
But I can think of a song.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. I have a
you
song.
have a song in your heart?
Yeah, there's a song in my heart, obviously. I'm that kind of guy. That song goes, doc scored every day. Got my doc scored on the replay. Doc scored like a melody in my scored. And Doc's singing now.
Yep. Doc every day. Doc scored every day. Nice.
That's what came to mind.
I'm so glad that you were prepared, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
That's why this podcast is good.
Yeah. Did we win again?
When did we find out about that?
Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair. All right. First question. On that sort of note, we talked about Superman's morality and what he maybe used to be like. But Booberry asks, is it just me, or was 30s Superman kind of a bully?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but it was also like, that guy's a crook, so it kind of doesn't matter what happens to him. You know, like the morality of the comic is different, but I do think there's something interesting in reading comics from the 30s and also early 40s, but
it's weird that he kept calling everybody gay, but
yeah, he just gave everyone a swirly.
Yeah.
There's something interesting about that era where it is pretty grim. Like at one point in one of these ones that I was reading, Superman
never made any.
Superman like stops a machine that's doing something. He like jams the machine.
Sure.
And the machine explodes, but he's carrying a guy when it happens. And then there's just a panel of, this guy died a horrible death as shrapnel lacerated his neck. And then you just pan away and it's like, but Superman's fine. And then they just move on. But it's like, there's like a real darkness.
Wow.
And again, Superman didn't do it to kill the guy, but he was also just like, well,
whoops,
crime doesn't pay.
Whoops,
and he's like,
oops.
Yeah, and he just like move on, you know, like he dropped that guy and he's like, well, he got what he deserved. He was like,
you get what you deserve.
Yeah. Oh my God. You get what you fucking deserve. You aren't fighting a woman now. All that kind of, he does have that.
I can't believe he said that.
He does have that sort of macho edge to him.
Yeah.
That I think is consistent with the era in which these are being written. I don't know that what I do think we got to give credit to these early days of Superman is that his Clark Kent persona is extremely important to him, but also allows Lois to be Lois.
Sure.
Because when he's there, some guy comes up and goes like, "Hey, Toots, sweet cheeks, I'm cutting in on this dance." And Clark goes like, "Oh, okay, sir, you can dance." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, it's okay, Lois, just dance with him and then we'll leave." And she's like, "I'm leaving now."
Yeah.
And, like, Clark is just like this like sniveling coward, and she calls him as much. But like, he could just, even for the time, the fact that he is playing himself like that is, I think it says something about the idea of like, I don't want people to know I'm Superman. I'm trying to keep people safe, but also Lois can handle it.
Yeah.
There's a panel where she slaps a guy and he quietly is like, "Atta girl, Lois." And then he goes like, "No, Lois, don't," is what he says out loud, but he's like, "Atta girl." And I kind of dig that.
I mean, don't you?
I mean, obviously, but I guess what I'm trying to say is when he's Superman, some of those like bullyish, toxic male things come out just because it's the 30s.
And he's very strong.
But I do think there's a concerted effort put in to make him as good as they could think of someone.
Sure, yeah.
Because they do reserve the like non-violence thing for weak Clark Kent.
Yeah,
like we want to see Superman punch and crush and smash. There is that kind of bullyish thing that's built in there, but they're aiming for something else, and I think people pick up on that. And then that expands into this thing we were talking about as his powers grow. He has to be less brash because otherwise he's very obviously not the good guy.
Yeah, he has to get closer to Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that Clark does get a little bit more self-assured, but still is kind of...
Yeah. Those things coalesce too, We're talking about the Dr. Occult story and how it's very obvious they like don't know how to set up or teach us about this character.
Yeah.
We're just sort of thrust in and go like, I hope they buy the next issue.
Yeah.
But I do think there's also a learning curve even by the time we get to Action and Detective and Superman and Batman, where it's like, we have a bit of an idea. He's an alien. He's strong. He's raised by humans, and he, fights for good, and he's Superman. We go, great. And then as they go like, wouldn't it be interesting if... And like these things will coalesce over time. Be like, people really like Lois, so Lois is definitely coming back. They like that he's a reporter. We're going to do more of that. You can't have, certainly not back then, a full-fledged idea out the gate.
Yeah,
I do think they sort of settle over time, and I think the bullyishness of Superman settles over time. I will say, the Morrison run at the beginning of the New 52 on Action Comics shows like young Clark starting to do hero stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And he's a bit bullyish.
Yeah.
He'll flare up the red eyes and be like, "I'll cook you."
Oh,
he won't, but he threatens it. Or he'll be like, "I'll drop you." Like, he's a bit more brash, and I don't think it's a crazy leap to think that's a riff on this very earliest era of Superman, and a way of kind of giving it like a little bit of canonical context. That it's like he's new.
Totally.
And he's doing the right thing, but he's young and he's brash and he speaks without thinking, or, he probably doesn't even believe what he says. That guy deserved what he got, but he also dropped the guy and he's like, well, I got to live with that. I think we can retcon.
Raging hormones, I get it.
Easy. I think we can retcon the justification for it, but the ultimate answer to all of these is it was the 30s.
Yes,
but
sure. All right, next question comes from Only Just Dandon again, who asks, before Slam Bradley was known for selling feminine products,
slam him up.
He was known as a tough crime fighter.
He was.
In the outline of the character, it was stated that Siegel and Schuster must take every opportunity to show him in a torn shirt with swelling biceps and powerful torso a la Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
How many opportunities could he possibly have?
Here's the great thing about these like early comics is like every opportunity. They'd be like, oh, the crooks ran into like the thresher room and he'd have like, dodge shit, or they'd be like, they'd have a knife and he'd, there's always a reason to cut up,
Is it weird that in my mind Slam Bradley isn't like a muscular guy, but he's like a really schlubby dude?
That's funny. Yeah, because Slam Bradley is like...
But in my head, the idea of someone named Slam Bradley...
Right. Yeah, let's just say this. I'd let him slam.
I'm gonna slam!
Yeah, slam or pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. It's sort of like funny to be like, how can we keep getting this guy shirtless? But I think there's lots of ways to do it. There's an explosion and his coat catches fire and he whips it off, but then there's like some holes in his shirt, or he's in a knife fight and stuff gets kind of cut or whatever, and he's in a car crash and something gets torn. Like, I think there's always a way to do it, especially because his adventures were very kind of like gritty, detective gumshoey things. There's lots of like fist fights and that. I mean, he was like literally like they describe him as like two-fisted. Like, he's a guy that goes in just like bam, 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 punch his way to an answer, He's a detective, but he's a detective that like hands first.
I mean, he's a detective, but he's still a cop.
I mean, he's a detective, like, I think because it's a way that like
it's a level of cop.
He's detective because he can then professionally punch.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's where Slam Bradley. That's kind of where he's at. I think it's a license to punch.
Their name's Slam. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
he's gonna slam.
Yeah, I don't think it's his Christian name. Yeah. What would you name the child? Slam. Oh, nice. Baptize him. He's like, fucking nice.
His Christian name is Slamathy.
Slamathy. It's short for Slatum.
Yeah. Slamantha.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's the book you want to read.
Next question.
Next question comes from Lilith, who asks, several of the more well-known books from the 1930s don't introduce the characters they are most known for until quite a few issues in.
Right.
Why do you think this is? Why does no one ever talk about anything that happened in Adventure Comics #1, for example?
Right. So I want to go back to an idea that we were talking about. This extends a bit past DC.
Yeah.
But like, what are the things that stuck and like endured even beyond superheroes? We're talking Flash Gordon, like Dick Tracy, shit like that. I think part of the problem is that, Zorro, characters like that endure because there's part of it is like they have a unique look and a cool name,
sure,
and a thing like that. And I think fundamentally, as much as people enjoyed Western stories and just general detective stories, I think there was a mistake in not making these characters recognizable enough. Yeah. Even Zatara the Magician, who is thoroughly upstaged in his first appearance because it's also the first appearance of Superman.
Yeah.
Zatara the Magician has a story in Action Comics #1. It's his first story. But he gets the cover on like Action Comics 12 and 14 or something like that. Like, he gets some action,
Nice.
And Zatara like keeps coming back, and then obviously Zatanna, carries that on. Like, that's a character that made an impact, and it's because he would talk backwards and do magic, and he had like the top hat and stuff. He had a recurring villain called the Tigress, who was like had like a look and a costume and like shit like that. And I think that's the piece that really got in the way of some of these other ones. Like, I think there was enough interesting to read that people would buy Adventure Comics or buy Detective Comics or buy Action Comics if those things weren't in there, or buy like New Fun Comics or whatever. But when you think about like, well, Batman's not until issue 27. It's like, it's not that Batman isn't until issue 27. It's that once 27 happens, that Batman's there and he's hitting all those boxes. Of course, everything else is going to start to slide.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't know it, but with the benefit of hindsight, we go like, well, what else was going to happen here?
Yeah.
New fun comics. Dr. Occult is like a little different, but also there's like a bunch of random fucking things. But like we don't see like, Dizzy Dinkles, the silly mailman in like a bunch of comics after that, because like who gives a shit once we're into magic and aliens and like you start losing those things, or you get them glommed onto the more popular superhero thing. Like Green Lantern had fucking, what's his name? Doinky Dibbles or whatever the fuck. I can't remember his name. Alex Jaffe's probably screaming at me right now.
Yeah.
But, like they would glom onto the more popular thing.
Yeah.
The things that endured were the things that could make an imprint. Dick Tracy's yellow coat is like, whoosh. And then the fact that it's like Flat Top has a flat top.
Yes.
Like all those fucking whatever, like Prune Face or whatever the fuck. All of his bad guys had like like shit going on, and that's that. Flash Gordon had, albeit racist, Mig the Merciless.
Sure.
But there's interesting like visuals and stuff. You can't forget some of those things, and I think just those stories, no matter how good they were, just a cowboy looks like a cowboy looks like a cowboy. You know who doesn't look like a cowboy? Zorro. That's why Zorro is more popular.
Totally.
Soldier looks like a soldier looks like a soldier. What doesn't look like a soldier? It'd be like, I don't know, like a robot. That stuff is the stuff that starts hanging out. And it's not all or nothing. There's an appetite for genre comics that remains through to like the 70s or 80s when it starts to taper finally.
Yeah.
War comics, romance comics, horror, all those things. But it's undeniable that like the quotidian adventures of like Slam Bradley, who it's actually kind of remarkable, he keeps on going with a story until like 151 or something of Detective Comics, which means he survives.
Wow.
He survives 120 issues where Batman's the lead.
That's crazy.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
But it's not a surprise that those characters fade out. Even super characters at a certain point couldn't keep up in the 40s, right? We talked about Black Canary replaced Johnny Thunder because they were like, this guy with a wish genie that could do anything is too boring. So then like, Johnny Thunder got replaced in his story on Flash Comics by Black Canary.
Yeah.
So there was even like within superheroes, extreme competition for that memory and that place in people's brains. So I when you look back at it, you go like, well, why weren't they in the first issues of that or whatever? And it's actually, I think, weirder that Action Comics leads with Superman, Zatara to a lesser extent, and then to a lesser extent, Tex Thompson. 3 characters that are still relatively like part of things.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that question from Siege the Box, who asks, why do you think that Superman was the breakout star of Action Comics, #1, rather than Zatara, especially given how prevalent magic-based stories were at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just more credit where credit is due. I think it's just better written and better drawn.
Sure.
It's just more interesting to look at. But it's also more kinetic. The magic thing is like say a spell and a thing happens, which is fantastic or whatever. And again, Zatara like has stories. He doesn't disappear after Action 1. It's not like they go, never mind. But Superman like picks a car up.
Yeah.
And that's a real like, you could feel that. That's visceral.
It's a thing that you can like imagine.
He jumps over a building. You could feel that. He like stops a train. All of these things are very like kinetic and physical, and
working within a world that you understand too.
And I think you can't deny,
especially when it's the first time you're seeing something like that. I think that's, in regards to magic, and magic is the thing that's been seen, but like this type of character hasn't really been seen.
But also, it's like Zatara doesn't have at this point in time much backstory.
Sure.
Most of what we learn about Zatara happens like later.
Yeah.
Like in Zatanna stories and shit.
Wow.
But right off the bat with Superman, we get he's from an alien planet. The planet was exploding. His parents put him in a rocket. He crash landed on Earth. And because he's from another planet, he has these fantastic powers.
That's interesting as hell.
We get Lois. We get that he's a reporter. We get like a lot of shit happens in his first story.
Yeah.
In the Zatara story, it's like, well, he's a stage magician. He does real magic. A fire breaks out. He stops the fire. And he's like, I could use this to help people, which is fine. But it's like, it's not that. It's just not that. Like the short answer version is that Superman's first story is just better.
Yeah. It's just undeniably good concept. Yeah.
And, that image on the cover, he gets the boost of being on the cover of the first one. And that's an image that's in his story, but that like picking up the car, it's just, it would be a thing people wouldn't have seen.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Yo Crow, who asks, what do you think would happen if, what would you think would happen to Batman if they didn't use the Bill Finger design? Would he have been lost to obscurity or have been redesigned later, but never having the legacy he has built up now?
Oh, God, that's interesting. Hard to say. I think what we can't throw out is that if they weren't using Bill Finger's design, Bill Finger being the initial, kind of creative mind, even though Bob Kane took all the fucking credit.
He fingered this.
Let's say Batman goes unfingered. If they're not using his idea for the design, they're likely not using his other ideas. And let's just quick list Bill Finger's other ideas. Yeah. Is that he's an orphan. He has a butler. He gets a sidekick. He has a cave. He has a car. He has cool gadgets. He has he works with the commissioner.
It's like all the Batman
everything
things,
that is the bat signal. Blah, blah, blah. I know I'm listing things that don't show up right away, but everything that we know of as foundational to Batman was Bill Finger.
Sure.
Bob Kane was like, what if a guy had a cape?
Yes.
And that's essentially like end of idea.
What if a guy named was Batman? Yeah.
Yeah, because Bob Kane's design is a red suit with like not a full cape, but like just bat wings, a blonde-haired guy with a domino mask, and that's it.
Sure.
So if we imagine you're taking away everything that is Batman, I got to imagine he doesn't skyrocket to popularity. I think your best, this is obviously all speculative, but I would say he would end up in the category of a character like Tex Thompson or Slam Bradley, where people are like, hey, do you remember this character that showed up for a bit? Isn't he interesting? And when there's a big event or they're going back in time, you'd be like, oh, there's the Batman. Remember him?
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be central. He wouldn't be this thing that we know today, because I don't think you can extricate just the design elements that Bill Finger contributed from the other more substantive, like, character things that he was doing. I think if you're not using Bill Finger's one thing, you're not using any of it. And then I just think that character just doesn't do anything.
That character looks so stupid.
Doesn't it look dumb?
Yeah, it looks real dumb.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think the most you could hope for from just a pure Bob Kane Batman is like you get to 0 hour and they go through time to like fight extant and stuff, and then you see like him and Crimson, you see the Batman and Crimson Avenger there, and you go like, oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
I think that's the best you get.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Last question comes from Alexander the Alex, who asks, I know DC used to make porno-ish comics. Did those include stepsisters and washing machines?
Jesus Christ.
If not, what happened to those comics?
So.
Step Batman.
Step Master Wayne.
Yeah. I'm stuck in the dumbwaiter.
I'm stuck in the alley.
Yeah.
Bring your parents.
Get me a pearl necklace.
I'll give them 2 shots. Jesus. National Allied Publications did not make porno comics.
Okay.
But that Donenfeld guy, the distributor they were in debt to, he made like porno comics. Actually, his distribution thing and like the stuff he was like putting out was interesting because they would put out like stuff for kids and then also like porn comics. And
Hey, where did you send this box?
oh no. Titties, get your titties. Times are tough and war looms in Europe, but titties. Here, I'm just going to pull this up here. So, this is from an article that I found called A Brief History of the Pornographic Superhero.
Nice.
So, Time magazine described Harry Donenfeld's line of girly pulp magazines in 1933, 4 years before Detective Comics comes out, as consisting of sleazy stories, drawings, and art study photographs of undressed females. So starting in the 20s, actually, Donenfeld had magazines called like Juicy Tales, which that was retitled as Joy Stories.
Sure.
It's basically like softcore porn.
Yeah.
Although this article does say PG-13 by contemporary standards.
Yeah. It's just like, then they smooched.
Yeah, you know, like it's, or you just like you see cleave or something.
Yeah,
like it's not like spread like fucking pussies and shit. Like, but there was like pep, spicy stories, spicy mysteries stories, spicy adventure stories, spicy detective stories, spicy western stories, etc., etc. Yeah, but he was also putting out like kid books. But yeah, Donenfeld was publishing since the 20s, like kind of porno comics. So because he was part of the thing that became DC, then like technically, yeah, that was the stuff DC was briefly involved in.
Is there any version of that exists anymore?
Oh, not porn comics.
Yeah.
I'm sure porn comics are still made, but not in a way that I like. I think probably mostly as like web comics, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's probably like
DeviantArt, baby.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I could see like a talented artist making,
I mean,
like panels and stuff. Didn't we see one when we did the?
See one every day.
Didn't we see one when we did the porn parodies episode?
Oh, maybe.
I do think there are like fanfic of like DC characters porn comics that are out there, but there's probably just also independent like porn comics. Here's one I'm going to throw out there. It would be outrageous to call it porn, but it absolutely is spicy and sexy. Is Stepan Sajic, who's done lots of art work for DC, has a book called Sunstone that I think started as an online comic, but is published as a book now. And Sunstone is like about like a kind of like BDSM, like kind of dumb relationship that, and it's like very sexy and stuff like that. I don't think it's like porn, but it's like extremely sexy.
Yeah.
But it has like a story and character and stuff like it's different than what we're talking about in the context of what was coming out here in the 30s.
Yeah.
These, you know, I think the nuance of artistic expression is a lot wider now. So you can run the gamut and you can have like actual story and characters and, you know, personality and stuff like that in a comic that is also fucking sexy. Whereas back then it was like, oh no, I dropped my blah, blah, blah. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
If you just want smut, go check out Friendly Pigeon on Instagram.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
Well, that was the last question, which means we have no more questions to answer.
Baby.
But we've got time for everyone's favorite game.
Oh, no, actually, we're out of time.
Oh, I guess we won't do it this week.
Yeah, that counts as a win.
No. Can you guess the name of the character based on someone who does not read comic books can describe that character to us? The way this works is I send a image of a DC Comics character to my wife who does not read comic books, nor does she care for them. She sends back 4 clues describing what she sees. She actually sent 5 this week, and I cut it down to 4.
Okay.
She was excited, I think, for this character.
Interesting. All right.
First of 4 clues. Here we go. Punk rock shoulder pads.
Okay. Lobo.
No. Nobo. It's actually, sorry, punk rock shoulder pad.
Okay. Warlord.
No.
Crush.
It's just
A little crush, not like I faint every time we touch.
It's not.
That's a Doc Squirt song. Fuck.
It's just a doc score.
Not like I scored every time we docs.
Wasted.
Next clue, please.
Next clue. Sexy swimsuit with utility belt. Punk rock shoulder pad.
Right.
Sexy swimsuit with utility belt.
This isn't like a weird look for like Artemis or something.
No.
Or Rampage.
Nope.
Or Barda.
Nope.
Ooh, next clue.
Trill marks.
Oh. Kind of makes me think they're meant to be like some sort of like leopard person or something.
It's neither bebop or rocksteady either.
Punk rock shoulder pad.
Yep.
Sexy swimsuit with utility pouch or belt.
Yep.
And trill marks. It's not cheetah.
Nope.
Tigress.
No. I remember the days when you used to so like declaratively say a name.
My confidence has been broken.
Now it's not this.
Unless it is. Huh?
I don't want this unless you're into it.
Hey, God, wouldn't that be crazy?
Yeah.
Or not?
Or was it? Is it?
Is it? Okay. Fuck you. Last clue, please.
Final clue. Gladiator poison ivy.
Gladiator poison ivy.
Mm-hmm.
Which I assume means green skin.
Could.
Fuck. Damn it. Is it Thorn?
No. Which just sounds like a Jewish character.
Rosenthorn. Yeah. Yeah, Paul Rosenthorn. Should I know this one? Is this a pretty
No.
big one? Okay. It's not Maxima.
No. I mean, you don't not know this character. But.
Right. It's not Shimmer or
No.
It's not Jinx or fuck. Trill marks, punk rock shoulder pad, sexy swimsuit, utility belt, and poison ivy.
Yeah. Gladiator poison ivy.
Gladiator poison ivy. Yeah, fuck. I think I can picture what it's supposed to look like, but I'm not connecting that to a character.
You said characters that they are associated with already.
Fuck. Piece of shit. Son of a bitch. Ooh, son of a bitch. Who did I say?
I don't know. Cold.
I already said it's not Tigress.
Yeah.
Panther.
No.
Fuck.
Hey, declarative statement. Look at you.
Yeah, that felt good. It'd been a while. Oh, is it shit. Hang on. What's her name? Is it Jennifer Morgan?
No.
What the fuck is her name? Shakira?
No.
Is it Yawara?
No.
Is it Kahina the Hunter? Fuck. Is it Vixen?
No.
Is it piece of shit, son of a bitch? Oh, that doesn't help at all. Is this like fan art of someone?
I mean, it looks like the character.
Who is it?
Knockout.
We already did fucking Knockout.
What do you mean?
We did Knockout like 4 weeks ago.
No, we did not.
We absolutely
No, we
did.
did not.
I'm going to pull up the goddamn thing right
We did
now.
not do it 4 weeks
We
ago.
absolutely did, you piece of shit.
No, we did.
We did. I'm pulling up the thing.
No.
Yes.
You still couldn't get it.
Guild. Because I don't oh. Guild tracks this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, okay, it wasn't 4 weeks ago, but episode 320, Knockout.
Months ago.
Like 2 months ago.
That's months.
Yeah, we're not supposed to double up at all.
Well, I don't have the list.
It's yes, you do. It's on our drive. You just don't look at anything. That's not the same as not having it.
Still didn't get it. Did you get it then?
That's an absolute push.
Did you get it then?
What?
Did you get it?
That's an absolute push. This is bullshit. Knockout again, you lazy fuck.
The first.
It's not even like it was from the first year or something. We
The
did it.
first time-
We did it 9 weeks ago.
The first time in years I've ever done it. I think you could cut me.
It's not the first time in years. You've done it before.
No, I haven't.
You have. I'll pull it up because it's all documented. If you'd care to look.
It documents doubles.
Oh yeah, because you did it, and I was mad about it the last time you did it. But
You?
last
That
time
doesn't sound like you.
But I did. I got it. I think the last time was Timberwolf. You did Timberwolf twice. Oh, they've got plenty. You just not. Yeah, and I got mad about that, but I did get it that time.
Doesn't
But
sound
I
like
still
you.
got mad
There's no
about
way
it
that was
because
you.
I'm a man of principle, and I get mad no matter what.
I mean, that part is true.
That's my principle.
You get mad no matter what.
Yeah. So that's an absolute push, obviously.
I'm sure he wouldn't have gotten it, whatever it was.
I would have. The only thing tripping me up was I just trusted too much.
Because you were thinking knockout, but you were like, there's no way.
It couldn't be. He would never do this. Certainly not so close together. I know he looks at the list before he picks one.
Yeah, so it's gotta be.
You just took advantage of my trusting nature.
That's what I do.
It's an absolute push. Do you know what? I actually think I get a win for that one.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because that's how egregious
That's how
this
you
is.
want to win?
Any means. I will win by any
Zero
means.
integrity.
What are you talking about? I don't just declare wins on any week, just weeks where you fuck up.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want...
You know what? For all that back talk, it's 2 wins now. I got 2 wins for that one. That's how that works.
Okay, but for 2 wins, you get 1 less review.
No. I get everything.
That's how this works. I'm always mad and I get everything I want.
Yeah. Life.
I'll take everything else. That's fine. All right. Well, if you want to reach out to us and ask...
No, wait. I want the Patreon money too. Shit.
No,
Damn it.
too late. It's all mine.
At least I keep winning this game in a way I've earned.
The real win.
Yeah.
If you want to send us a question for next week's episode...
Oh, right. Shit. I do have something
We
for
know
this.
what that is.
Shut the fuck up, man.
Or unless you're going to make the same theme as we've done before.
No, next week's episode is a thing. Alex Jaffe is coming back on.
Jeez, this guy's on all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Pushing me out?
Well, I don't know. Let's just say he has never betrayed me like this.
I'm sure he has.
Oh, okay. You're right. We're going to be talking about the DC Nation kind of block of animation.
What's that?
So that includes Green Lantern, the animated series, Beware the Batman, Teen Titans Go, a bunch of shorts that got made. So DC Nation was like an animation block. It includes a whole bunch of things. So send your questions in about that. Alex will be back on. We'll be talking about that next week.
Hey, that's right. You can send those questions to our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast.
our Twitter,
At Dr. DC.
our Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast.
our email,
DrDCPodcast@gmail.com.
go on our subreddit.
r/Dr__DC.
The doc phone is always open.
208-917-3238.
208-917-DCEU. If we're young and cool, that's why we're on TikTok.
At Dr. DC.
It's corn.
A big lump of knobs. It has the juice.
It has the juice.
Can't imagine a more beautiful thing.
We're old and irrelevant. That's why we have a website.
Yeah, drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
You want to send us dick pills or SEO services, that's where you go.
We do get a lot of emails for dick pills.
Yeah. Also, if you want to give us a 5-star review, we would love to receive that.
Yeah, we'll receive it.
Yeah.
Send it to any platform that takes it.
Wherever you listen to this podcast, you can subscribe to that podcast there as well as give us a 5-star review. If it's not on Apple Podcasts, just stop. If it's not on Apple Podcasts or on Facebook, why don't you take a screenshot and just send us an email? Also, if you want to send us some physical mail, you can send it to Richard Eden or Reed Vanier at 301 Hogue Street, Whitehorse, Yukon, Canada, Y1A 1V8. Also, we have a fancy dancy Patreon where you can give us money.
That's right. Patreon.
Reed will never see it, but
Patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Doc Squad,
That's right.
our awesome fan community, and at the higher levels, you get bonus episodes, you get videos, you get theme polls, all sorts of fun stuff that helps to support us.
And if you really want to continue that support for us, well, we have another thing that you can support. It's a whole other podcast.
That's right. Ghostfacer is a supernatural rewatch. We are going through.
We're going through every single episode of the CW TV show Supernatural. We are now into the very end of season 5. We have one more episode that's coming out on Monday from season 5, and then the series done. Wrong. We got 10 more seasons.
Yeah, we'll be doing this until 2027.
That's right. When your daughter is how old?
No. No.
The passage of time is imminent.
She'll be 9.
Oh my God.
We'll finish
almost double digits.
We'll finish the podcast and basically then she'll turn 9.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and she'll be like, "Was it worth it, Dad?" And be like, "Probably not."
Cats in the cradle and the silver spoons. Ciao, ciao.
Adios.
Heroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of light.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.
An absolute push.
Oh, right. Jesus Christ. Well, yeah, not a win, but a push.
Oh, fuck. No.
Bye.